PALZ shows Europe as it really is. Hello and welcome to Vox Civica, where democracy has a voice. I'm Karagiorgos, journalist and correspondent for the European Youth Press, and part of the editorial team behind PALZ, our youth-led platform for in-depth journalism and civic storytelling across Europe and beyond. In today's episode, we are turning our attention to youth participation, not as a buzzword, but as a real institutional commitment. Our guest is Assel Murat, who coordinates the youth portfolio at the OSCE Secretariat in Vienna. With over 6 years of experience in human rights, gender equality, and media freedom, Assel brings both field knowledge and strategic vision to the table. Together, we unpack what it really means for an international organization to move beyond consultation and toward structural youth participation. From the OSCE's pool of young experts to the group of friends on youth and security, we explore how young people are shaping policy, peacebuilding, and the future of international cooperation. Let's dive in. Before we begin, a warm thank you to today's guest, Assel Murat, for accepting our invitation. Assel, it's a truly pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Georgios. I'm happy to be here and looking forward to hear your questions.
Thank you. So let's dig into what youth engagement really looks like. Institutions often talk about involving young people, but the OSCE seems to be aiming for something deeper. But what does that really mean for the OSCE when beyond consultation to structural participation?
Thank you so much for this question. I must say that sometimes decision makers, also different kinds of institutions, they invite young people for the sake of inviting them. Basically, it's about tokenism. However, one must be aware that young people are the drivers of new ideas, fresh perspectives, and also they have amazing and useful ideas for the society's development and the policy-making processes. So about the OSCE, we try to make sure that young people are involved in the processes of development of activities, especially the Office of Secretary General at the OSCE. We try to make sure that they are participating in the events that they consider meaningful and interesting for them, also professionally and personally. How does it work? First of all, let me introduce you the initiative so-called Pool of Young Experts. Maybe we will talk about it a bit further, but just for you to know that young people are co-trainers, co-facilitators, co-speakers, and also contributors, also research-wise, written contributions-wise. And they present before the delegations, before the large audience, including their peers, their findings, perspectives, and basically that's how it works on the organizational level. We try to make sure that all the dimensions of OSCE, just to reiterate, it's 3 dimensions. First of all, it's politico-military. Second is economical and environmental. And third is the human dimension. So all of this so-called 3 baskets of OSCE have youth perspectives, basically meaning that integrate youth components, young people's expertise and thoughts. Yeah, I hope I addressed the question, but maybe later on I can reply more on it.
I would like to say that big ideas are definitely important, but I'm also curious about how they are implemented. From what I have seen, the OSCE youth work, it's backed by real frameworks. Can you walk us through how youth engagement is built into OSCE's mandate and daily operations?
Thank you. And I think this question is a bit connected to the very first question of yours, and I just recalled that you asked about structural engagement of young people, and I just wanted to say that as it's connected to the second question, that OSCE has the field missions, as you might know, and they are located in the region of Central Asia and also Southeastern Europe, and each field mission, they have their own mandate. We are Secretariat, but we are working separately and independently from the field missions. Same goes to them. And they work with young people. And as a good practice, they have advisory groups. Not all of them. This is a disclaimer, but some of them. For example, the mission in Albania and also in Bosnia and Herzegovina, they have youth advisory groups, meaning that young people can be a member of these youth advisory groups and they can provide their expertise, opinions, perspectives on the issues that mission can consult with them, including on the activities that young people consider important. So this is indeed the tangible input that young people can provide. And also, at the same time, as I told you, young people sometimes attend the activities that they can provide research papers, so we can see what OSCE can incorporate in the processes of organization, also designing of activities, and implementation itself. And at the same time, once the activity is concluded, we follow up with the young people asking for their feedback. What can be done better, what OSCE can incorporate more, consider more, and then building on this, we try to make the next activity a bit better and more inclusive based on the feedback that we receive.
Zooming in now, let's talk about how this vision takes shape on the ground. Let's talk about what you said before, concrete programs. The pool of young experts sounds especially exciting. What is it, and what have you seen come out of it so far?
Yes, Pool of Young Experts is an initiative that OSCE recently launched, well, relatively recently, last year in October. There was an open call for applications for young people to apply, especially for those who attended already OSCE events, so-called OSCE alumni, informally. And they applied, and we selected 82 experts. We received more than 300 applications. And based on the performance of this applied experts, we selected 82 ones. Most of them are women. And then based on the expertise that they have pretty much a diverse background. We see when, to which event, and how they can be they can attend, can contribute. And also we receive the requests from the colleagues. I told you, right? We have the departments in the Secretariat, a lot of them are working on 3 dimensions of comprehensive security. At the same time, we have the field missions. Based on their request, we see which expert can attend, contribute, speak if needed, or conduct small training if needed, and so on. So that's how it works. And young experts, we invite them for the thematic events, making sure that every single event, let's say we have the event on climate change, has a youth perspective. So young person can make their statements, presentations, also, if needed, research, sometimes even consultancy. So we should not take for granted some of the expertise. It's still a work. And if it makes sense, we make consultancy contracts with young experts. And of course, it's about mutual benefits. Organization benefits from their expertise. At the same time, young people also make sure that they present meaningfully before the large audience, including before the peers, before the fellow experts.
Allow me to be a bit provocative and ask you,
Sure.
Do young participants actually see policy discussion, or are they mainly, let's say, active observers?
Thank you for this question. Myself, I'm a young professional. I'm only 28 years old. And I know what does it mean to be just a passive observer. I'm not really feeling that you are actually making a difference or your voice is heard, let's put it that way. So being a young professional, I'm trying to make sure that young people are really involved, not just for the sake of tokenism. We were talking about it earlier. So yes, we try to make sure that they actually contribute. Recently, we had some events hosted by different delegations at the OSCE settings in Vienna, and it's just one example. But from my side, I recommend, based on their request, a speaker from the pool of young experts on the topic that is required by the delegation, by the organizers in Vienna. And I told you that the topics are different. And agenda can be very much diverse, but we incorporate youth mainstreaming, youth component, meaning that in each agenda we have young person as a contributor, basically presenting their findings, their concerns, voice that they think that important for young people. And after that, the delegations, the participants, participating states, also civil society organizations that are present during the events, they follow up with young people. They see what can be done after the event further. Me, myself, as a coordinator of the initiative Pool of Young Experts, I'm in touch with them. We see how we can integrate their findings into the next planning activities, designing, and also receive their feedback about the event, and make sure that next time, if such settings, if such events are taking place, what can we do better? So that's how it works. At the same time, young people, they are asked a lot of questions from the participants. They provide meaningful answers aftermath, and then their thoughts are appreciated. I see that it's taken seriously by the participants. And of course, young people provide their recommendations. We cannot really control whether these recommendations will be surely implemented. That's the thing. But at least we make sure that these recommendations are there, they are heard, they are taken note of, and then on the level of project management, for example, that I'm running, the project that I'm running, I can see if I can make this recommendation useful, incorporated in the project settings. So, and also, as you might know, project managers, they write narrative reports after the activity is completed. So from my side, I include this findings, contributions of the young person, young expert presented there, and the donors have the access in the end to this report. They read, if needed, they consult, they incorporate. Again, there is a discretion by the donor how to make use of it, but in the end, I make from my side the best that this findings and research findings or presentations are heard or visible, you know. So yes, and also it's important to make sure that during these events, be it hearings, be it training seminars, are discussed, not just heard and that's it. Because if it's a training, young people, they exchange, they see if they have similar situations, similar challenges. For example, last year we conducted the training for the young people, basically members of Pool of Young Experts, on professional skills in peace and security area. So as I told you, they have diverse backgrounds. Let's say gender experts, experts on combating human trafficking in human beings. They also combating terrorism, extremism, and radicalism. They are brought together, but despite the different expertise, they have common challenges. So, for example, ageism, for example, tokenism, we were discussing about it, or discrimination, let's put it that way. They discuss it, and of course they exchange how they can overcome these situations, what can be done better. Also, we have state officials in the pool, they can also discuss with the state officials what they feel, young state officials, what they feel and how they make it work better. This is just one setting. And also, next setting is, let's say, public hearings or presentations that are made in front of the OSCE participating states delegations. Here, it's a bit more high-level event. And of course, we make sure that young people, they speak up and tell about their concerns, so the delegations can make the use of it in the end. As I told you, it's a discretion of the delegation whether to use it or not, but our main goal is to provide the platform that allows young people to be visible, to be heard, and to feel that they are making contributions different. And aftermath, of course, they can follow up with the delegations, with OSCE staff members, and with their peers.
Great. I believe you navigate us pretty thoroughly regarding these initiatives. But I would like also to ask you, how you ensure, for example, social or likely racial inclusion?
So on the level of activities, it depends which activity we're having. We have, for example, exclusive activities only for the pool of young experts, as I told you earlier, to make sure that we are providing capacity building for them at the same time benefiting from their expertise. And just to tell you, this 82 young experts, they are from OSCE region. They have different background and they have different expertise. But let's talk about the activities for the youth in the OSCE region. Usually it's about open calls. We have very classic activity by OSCE, Model OSCE. Maybe you have heard about it. It's a simulation exercise that allows young people to simulate the permanent council session, discussions and decision-making there. OSCE is an organization that consists of 57 participating states that take decisions only by consensus. We provide young people with a simulation case scenario, and then they engage into the simulation activity, and in the end they decide whether there is a consensus or not, which is always a decision. And when we do open calls, we put the criteria, who can participate, and also we provide sometimes regional focus on the simulation exercise. For example, we've done an activity, Model OSCE activity for the young people based in the Western Europe. Usually it's around 30-25 people attending, and we do the selection based on the applications that we have. Also, we've done similar activities in Central Asian region. Young people from the region can apply, and also we select them, invite them in the end. And last year in October, for example, we've done such selections for the youth in Southeastern Europe. Also open call. Everyone who is interested from the region could have applied. And then we've implemented this activity, and we make sure that from each state in the region, we have equal number of people attending at the same time, making sure that we have gender balance. So this is just a small example based on my practice, but we also have the colleagues who are doing the same calls for applications for their activities depending on their work. As mentioned, we have 3 baskets, and each department in the Secretariat, they have separate activities. As young people's, as the work with young people, it's not a monopolized approach, it's cross-cutting issue. Everyone can do activity with young people. And of course, they have their calls for applications and everyone can apply.
Thank you. From my understanding, meaningful youth engagement doesn't happen in a vacuum. It needs also political support. Are we starting to see national level changes because of this work?
Well, every participating state, if we talk about OSCE, they have their own agenda, priorities, and also legislation, political developments, and each situation is different. But if we are talking about the developments as to the youth and security agenda, by the way, at the OSCE settings, it's always youth and security agenda, not youth, peace, and security agenda. Yet, every single state has a has its own legislation, and it's called very differently. For example, National Action Plan on Youth, Peace and Security. In Finland, for example, which is considered one of the best good practices in the world on promoting the rights of young people and involving them into the decision-making, they have their own national action plan. And the country was very first to adopt such a plan in the world. It's a fact, but Finland is chairing the organization this year, and it tries to promote good practices that happened in the country. And now, as an example, Kyrgyzstan adopted such plan this year, in the beginning of this year, if I'm not mistaken, in January, also taking note of the practices in Finland, which is a good sign. Basically, states exchange with each other, discuss, and they see what can be done. Of course, the content of the national action plans can vary depending on the context, depending on the capabilities, depending on the situation in the country. Yet, it's one of the documents empowering young people, enabling them to be more engaged into the politics, internal one, and decision-making processes. So this is the evident example at the OSCE settings done as to the legislation making. At the same time, participating states, they consult with the OSCE on activities with young people if needed. They cooperate together with the OSCE institutions to make sure that young people are involved in the decision-making processes and make sure that there is a platform where they can consult with young people. Some of these platforms, they are not having mandatory effect or legally binding effect, but it's still a platform, informal platform, that can be used for recommendations or decision-making processes. So I provided you with two concrete examples as to legislation, which often has legally binding effect. Yet, one should not underestimate the informal platforms that young people can attend, participate, and provide their inputs. I already mentioned informal platforms that OSCE field missions have. For example, I mentioned advisory groups, and also we have throughout the OSCE region youth-led NGOs who attend the public hearings in the OSCE region, depending on the state, and provide their expertise and inputs. It's just not given a name, for example, advisory groups or youth council, whatever. It's just a regular attendance from their side.
Great. Let's be real though, none of this is easy. From your experience, which are the main challenges in getting youth from, let's say, token invited guest to trusted co-architect?
You mean challenges that young people face with? Or
or OSCE during the process to put them in a place that can actually save the future?
Well, as I told you, tokenism is one of the challenges. Unfortunately, let me be honest. Myself, I always feel this. And also, it's about intersectional features that young people also have. Youth is also intersectionality component. Add to the youth, women, a person with disability, a person living with HIV, or race. It's always a barrier to certain resources, to certain public discussions or decision-making. One of the challenges that is young professional facing with every day is, of course, ageism. Their opinions are not considered seriously. One can always say, oh, you don't have enough expertise. Oh, you don't have enough knowledge. You should still learn more. You should still do this to participate here or to make a difference here. But it's always about the stereotypes and perception that can be challenged. Right now, for example, we have different perceptions by the policymakers of young people. Traditionally, it was that young people are vulnerable groups who needs to be protected from different kinds of threats. And second is that young people are economic resources. Of course, they pay taxes, they financially contribute to the state budget. And third one, the very recent one, and I think it's one of the great practice, that young people are experts. Here we are sitting together, you are a young person, young journalist, myself, young professional. We have expertise. We possess the skills that is needed to implement some activities that are based on our portfolio, on our work. It doesn't mean that we cannot contribute. Of course, we can contribute, and especially the thing is that young people bring fresh perspectives, ideas. They are utilizing the technologies that are very much in line with contemporary developments, and of course, we see some things differently than senior generation. Even myself, I see that generation Z. Myself, I'm millennial, and a bit on the border with Gen Z, but they think differently. Although we have some small years of difference, they approach the situation from different angle, and I think it's wonderful. We have our own opinions and approaches. We can join the forces and do things together, hand in hand. So that's the message that one should understand. Also, with the senior generation. And while we are having such platforms where both sides can be present, we can make sure that our solution is comprehensive. For example, different groups have their needs, and they can be very much different. Also, young women, young men, they have different needs, and one should understand it. And of course, when we voice our needs, when we voice our concerns and challenges, the decisions are taken much more comprehensively. And when we take decisions comprehensively, internal peace in society is maintained. We don't have conflicts there, because we make sure that inclusion is there, needs are addressed, and everyone is heard. So yeah, I hope I addressed your question.
Totally. But let me forward with a more personal, let's say, question. And
Of course.
And what has surprised you most all these years, either positively or frustratingly?
For a young professional?
Yeah.
Frustrating. For me, being a young woman professional, it's always frustrating to see that I'm considered as an interpreter or just an assistant sometimes, although I'm holding the management position, assistant project officer position here, and sometimes they just don't know and assume that I'm just a assistant, or whenever I say something, for example, it cannot be accepted so much with seriousness. And then when the male colleague comes up, it's a bit more serious. So it's a bit of mixture of gender and youth perspective here. And it's one of the frustrating things that can appear during the daily work. At the same time, one should not exclude that young men also have the challenges, frustrating ones, on their daily work. At the same time, saying that, oh, you're a man, you don't have to say about your emotions, frustrations. You have to be provider. You don't have to, you have to be always manly. This kind of perceptions, and it's a bit also frustrating. I see that some colleagues, young colleagues, are also sharing their frustrations like this. It's just basic everyday perception. Or if you're surrounded by a bit senior colleagues, it's also about whether your opinion is taken seriously, or whether it's taken at all. So yes, it's a main challenge. Yet over the time, I always think that if you, again, it's a bit of more work. You prove yourself, you work, you do your job, well, then you are taken seriously. Then your inputs are considered, and it's about persistency. You don't give up. You show that you are interested, you contribute to the tasks, and then you see that gradually it's changing. Gradually your opinion is considered. So this is how I address this myself every day. And of course, we can talk about different distinctions here about race and different kinds of, for example, religion or social status. Yet these people feel and face with similar situation in their daily life. So that of the main challenge that I can share with you on the personal level.
How do you know when youth engagement is actually working? I mean, can you just share with us a success story? What does a success story looks like?
Young people, they attend usually, depending on the country, of course, depending on the legislation, public hearings, discussions of draft laws. And of course, we have youth-led organizations working on certain issues. For example, let's say the law on combating gender-based violence is discussed. Here, when we are discussing gender, we are also talking about young women and girls and children in some cases. And of course, NGOs working on these issues are invited and discussed, and discussing the issues as to the law. So here, youth-led NGOs, they are attending, and of course, they are providing their recommendations and inputs. And if you look into the countries who is attending the public hearings and who is contributing, usually, depending again on the country, let's say Finland or Kyrgyzstan, these young people, they are attending and providing their expertise. And then the state body who is conducting these public hearings, they of course take note of such contributions. And in the end, when the document is finally adopted or it's a bit polished and posted for discussion again, you see which recommendations are included there. This is one of the tangible outputs, that your recommendation is there in the law, in the draft law. So here I see it's evident that young persons or any other person's recommendation or voice is heard and included. It's one of the examples. And OSCE Secretariat facilitated, for example, last year, the discussion of the National Action Plan on youth, peace and security in Kyrgyzstan. It was November last year. And I was witnessing myself that NGOs attending these public hearings, discussions, also discussions within the platform that OSCE facilitated, they were youth-led. And they provided concrete concerns and recommendations that the state officials should take into consideration when adopting the National Action Plan on youth, peace and security. So this is one of the outputs that young people can provide, and it's tangible.
So, wrapping up, if we were to visit this conversation, let's say 5 years from now, what change would you hope to see? And maybe what should stay the same, because we are martyrs of a backsliding of civic society, for example?
I wish I can see, and I still observe this is happening. It's not that bad, let me be honest. Of course, we have challenges, but we also have positive developments. For example, we are conducting the activities for young people every year. And recently, I met a person, he is now a young parliamentarian in Andorra, who attended the OSCE roadshow that happened in 2022. He was an attendant, he was a participant at this event. And he told me that he was inspired by the event and he wanted to pursue his career further with OSCE. And now he is a member of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly and he is a young parliamentarian there. He is presenting his country there, presenting the youth voice on behalf of his country. And he told me that these events that OSCE conducted, they inspired him to pursue his career in public service, which was a wonderful example for me that still together we can make a difference. And I want to see more young people participating in this similar platforms and holding state officials' position who can really make a difference and who can really tell on behalf of their states, young people, about their concerns, suggestions, what can be done much more better, also internally on the national level and on the international arena. When we're talking about international organizations such as OSCE or UN or European Union, these young parliamentarians, they can make a difference. And of course, I want to see more young people in decision-making processes. I want to see youth-led NGOs being consulted on important pressing issues in the country or internationally. And also, one of the positive examples that I observed is that United Nations established youth office in 2022, which is a good practice, and they employed a young professional to hold the position of Assistant Secretary General on Youth Affairs. It's a wonderful example that young professional is working with youth and for youth. So I want to see young professionals working with youth and understanding also young people better, what do they need, and providing platforms where young people can speak and, of course, make a difference. And of course, I want to see young people not giving up. This is very important. Having internal passion, energy, resistance to go beyond their capacities, beyond what they can do now, because they can do much more. They have to realize that they can do so much more and they should not give up. That's my vision. And I see that young people are doing it very well. They're persistent, they are energized, they are having fresh perspectives. So I see that much more young people can be more employed in the sphere of international organizations and public service. And also diplomacy. This is also a positive development. Now, in the setting of OSCE Secretariat, every day I meet with different kind of colleagues, and I also meet with young diplomats. Of course, depending on the country, some of the countries, they have more young diplomats, some of the countries less. But I see that they are there, and it's always a good sign. They learn from each other, they learn from senior diplomats, and they teach each other on how to do things much more better based on their personal experience. And I like having this young diplomats also as speakers during our events, because they can advise young participants, young experts on life hacks that they used, on good practices that can work also on their professional way. Basically, peer-to-peer learning. This is the thing that I really appreciate. And of course, sharing young people their advice to each other, because one should not underestimate the learning from one another, especially peers. And I appreciate that so much. And I appreciate the dialogues between senior professionals and young professionals. They can also learn from one another, not as in a classical way, lectures from the senior professionals, but senior professionals also can learn from young people. I want to see these events more happening.
Thanks so much, Assel, for sharing both the structure and the soul behind the OSCE's youth work. I mean, if this conversation makes anything clear, it's that young people aren't just the future; they are shaping the present with the tools and spaces to do so. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, you're right. Thank you so much for this podcast. I'm always open if you have any questions, follow-ups, and I appreciate that we had this opportunity to discuss this pressing and important topic.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you again, Assel. Make an impact on Europe with Pulse Z. Publish European stories, learn journalism, and make your voice heard.